Okay.
Hello.
Hi, listeners and viewers. Welcome to another episode of Wine. I'm Treese, and tonight I'm drinking rosé.
And I'm Jenilyn, and I'm drinking a Malbec.
I'm Shirley, and I'm drinking Pinot Grigio from Fullinati.
Okay. I'm Tia, and I'm drinking sparkling water, lime flavored.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Mishka, and I'm drinking red wine and lemon elderflower soda from Trader Joe's.
Yes.
See, I told
Sorry,
you
I
yours
love
must be
elderflower.
sounding delicious. I'm just saying.
It's cute.
All right, so today we'll be discussing the school shooting that took place in Florida on Valentine's Day and providing information on action you can take as far as legislation action as well as safety. Just a quick disclaimer though, I mean, the stuff we're about to be discussing is super heavy, but if you happen to be listening to us on your way to work or at work, maybe don't drink, just save it for later because the shit's heavy. But if you're not driving home from work or you're sitting comfy somewhere, go ahead and pause while you pour yourself your favorite glass of wine. Or if you don't drink, pour a beverage of your choice. Hopefully some caffeine or something. I don't know. It's just super heavy today. But anyway, remember to always drink responsibly, relax, and join us for wine. So let's get sipping. My port's so quiet. So quiet. Right.
In terms of how we can create change with gun regulation in light of what happened a few weeks ago in Florida. And I started the conversation last week with how crazy lobbyists are in Florida and how gun-ho, pun intended, they are on keeping their current gun regulations. I personally think that one of the ways that we can help to create change is by removing political power from the lobbies and the lobbyists, such as the NRA. I think it starts with money, right? And so I think by prohibiting the ability to provide campaign contributions would be really important. I don't have it fully fleshed out, but I think, and that comes with the Federal Election Committee, the FEC, Federal Election Commission, and then I don't know how this would ever be able to happen. It's very unlikely for it to happen, but by prohibiting lobbyists from providing monetary contributions to elections and people campaigning for office, I think that would be a powerful way to diminish their political power. Again, it's very unlikely to happen, but I think that's a big part of the problem that we have with big organizations like the NRA is they provide money to these politicians, and these politicians want that money. They want to win these elections. So in a way, they are beholden to the lobbyists and their donors. And I feel like it should actually be the opposite. And maybe that's how it actually started in government, is that lobbyists were reaching out to politicians to get their agenda pushed, but it was in the power of the politician. And I feel like it's completely upended these days where politicians are beholden to lobbyists. And that's, I think, a big problem with the current situation. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I think that's something that President Obama talked about and he pushed for, as well as Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton. But of course, when you get into office and you have your list of things you want to, change on your agenda or put into play, it hardly ever gets any direct change happens because you have a laundry list. So I think it just kind of fell off the list of shit he had to do, of other things. But I think that was something that they both wanted to address. Well, all three of them wanted to address.
Yeah. So anyway, that was that was a suggestion of mine. Is that all of the, I feel like all of the real political power is in the hands of these big organizations and these lobbyists, and it's not in the hands of the politicians, therefore in the hands of the people anymore. You know, like the problem with big government isn't the actual government and the policymakers, it's the lobbyists pushing their agenda on policy. I think is what's really running our nation. You know,
I agree.
This is really running our politics these days.
Yep.
I agree with you about that. So in going with that, I guess, should I segue? Okay. So just in going with that and talking about like ways in which we can all create change and use our own political power, is that these the same politicians that year after year, shooting after shooting, continuously sending their thoughts and prayers to all the victims of all these shootings, they continuously do that, and then as soon as anyone, particularly Democrats, try to create some kind of policy or suggest anything about gun restrictions or any gun control laws, they immediately get upset and super defensive and say now's not the time to discuss or to create some policy change. We need to let these victims mourn, these families mourn, and all this bullshit. What we can do ourselves is vote these people out of office. Like it's something to that. So 2018 is coming up. I mean, it's here, and November is coming. So we need to start looking at the politicians that aren't doing the things that we want to change, because there's been too many fucking shootings at this point. Like I've been hearing, it's like 18 school shootings this year. This is the first mass shooting of the year, one of the most deadliest since Columbine in terms of school shootings. Like this shouldn't be happening.
Since Sandy Hook, I believe.
Sandy Hook, sorry.
Yeah.
So it's too much. So at this point now, what we need to do is take it upon ourselves and look at the people that we're voting into office and who we're giving our votes to. And if they're not willing to create some kind of change or institute some kind of gun restriction or put any legislation together and work bipartisanly or whatever they need to do to get some gun restriction laws, we need to vote their ass out of office, basically.
Right.
That's one thing we can do.
And there's records of, like I mentioned last week, of who the NRA is paying. So those people that are receiving direct funds from them, they need to go.
And we're not saying like, you know, Democrats are they're always like pushing all the gun restriction and guns laws. We're not saying solely just push Democrats in there. We just need some good, like, non-crazy Republicans in office as well. So we just need to find those candidates and also make sure that hold on, I'm sorry, what? we can edit this.
You're not supposed to get so So I just had a brainstorm when she's been talking. What if in each pod coming up, or every other pod or whatever, that we feature a politician, aka a Democrat maybe, to vote for in the upcoming election, and their voting records and what they stand for and blah, blah, blah. Maybe even talk about like the person that they're going against and why they shouldn't vote for them. What do you guys think?
That'd be good.
That'll help, because
I only got distracted.
People don't look up this shit. So maybe up to us to kind of provide that information.
That's good. I was going to say, before we start saying like we should vote for whoever, we don't know who's actually running yet. Right. So it's like we shouldn't probably endorse anything that we're not sure.
I'm going to put that message in the WINE group me, just so that it's not just lost in the chat here.
I know we have our primary. See, I need to talk to you about that, because I don't know shit. I need to get on that. But we have our
and
primary.
It's good for us too. We need to be doing that.
Yeah, we should probably need to figure out what's going on.
I know for us, you can go like maybe you guys could too. Like if you go to your county's board commission and type in. Well, I know for us, like you type in your address and it'll give you a sample ballot of all the people who are going to be on the ballot for the primary election. So
there's so many, and I just don't know them.
We got
like all the judges and like.
Oh my God,
the judges get me. I'm like, sure, why not?
And then
never know.
It's a lot. I need to talk about this with somebody.
We'll take some time, and we have time.
We do.
Yeah.
In the next 10 months or something like that, 9-10 months to start getting that information out there.
Sure.
Okay.
So maybe if it is
That sounds
every
good.
pod, we just pick one person from a certain area or a bigger area.
That's cool.
Anyway, sorry, I just had that. I wasn't expecting you to get so distracted.
Well, my chat box is like right in front.
Oh, okay.
I saw brainstorm. I'm like, oh, do I have to pause real quick? What are we doing?
Sorry.
No, you're fine. But then we saying that I don't know who we would be voting for anyway, so it probably shouldn't be including that first stuff into it. Anyway,
I know Rick Scott is trying to get a Senate seat at some point, so I know that Florida governor seat is going to be up.
Yeah.
Is he really?
Mm-hmm.
That's unfortunate.
It's on one of the pods. You know the guys.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh.
You know the guys.
The guys.
Anywho, political power.
Political power. So we talked about voting the people out. So we'll end it there.
Yeah.
So if anybody else wants to say anything.
What was I going to say? I was going to say something else.
Me too. But it wasn't about earlier. It was something about legislation.
Yeah.
Oh, I think I know what I was going to say.
I'm going to see if it's the same thing I wanted to say, and I'm just going to co-sign.
I concur.
Okay. Just bouncing off as not even like a political like person or whatever, but even just trying to push legislation. I know when people say like, oh, we're going to take the guns away, that we're not defending our Second Amendment rights, blah, 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 bullshit. We can take baby steps. You know, we're not proposing to take all guns away. We can take like the semi-automatic rifles that have been like in all these mass shootings, that we can take those away. That's not necessary to have. So even pushing small legislation like that, we can start trying to push that, just to introduce little things first, you know. So they don't get so threatened that we're like taking their Second Amendment away from them. We're just
I'm all
taking
for
just
a
like
complete overhaul. Just give
and I am
money
too.
away from,
Right. Okay, if it was me, my personal
Nip it in
opinion,
the
you
bud.
don't need guns, right? But there is a good amount of people in this country that stick to their guns.
Pun
Do you
intended.
get it? Do you get it? But so, you know, they get scared easily. So we should probably try to tiptoe around it and just at least try to get these mass shooting guns out of here.
Right.
And I get it on a basic level, the Second Amendment and why it's in place with the way that the country was founded. Like, the people that were here were being pushed around by their government and being invaded by like their motherland or whatever. So it would be weird to have it so that citizens couldn't have guns in case their government tried to overtake them, basically. Like, I get it, but that was, how old is the United States?
Oh.
Old.
Pretty fucking old.
Well,
We're not
years old.
1776.
Yeah,
Carried
right.
You divide it by 2, I think.
We're not in those times now. England is no longer the people that we are answering to. It doesn't make sense for our world.
242 years old, if we're going to go by 1776.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
That's no longer the world we live in.
Yeah, and like I said on the, sorry.
No, you're fine.
I was just repeating what I said on the Vegas episode as well, is that back then the guns were not the guns we have today as well.
You had to reload.
So much.
It was a musket.
Yeah.
For taking
Put that gunpowder in there.
Yeah.
Badgers.
There was effort into trying to shoot a gun, whereas now there's nothing to do.
Pull it off. Oh.
Which goes into what Jenna Lynn was saying, is that we're not talking about, as much as I would like to, we're not talking about a complete overhaul, right?
No.
We're talking about at least, you do not need to own a semi-automatic gun or a bump stock or tools to make your gun into a semi-automatic. Like, you don't need that. You don't. In what world do you need that? You don't.
Right.
Period, point blank.
The other thing is like, even so, going on with the Second Amendment, we're not trying to take the right away. Like, we're not saying that you can't have any guns. All we want to do is place restrictions to prevent mass shooting. So it's not to say like you can't carry your gun, you can't have your concealed carry or any of your guns legally. We're just saying that we should have restrictions and limitations on the type of guns that you have access to, and limiting and preventing people who shouldn't have access to those guns, like a 19-year-old should not have access to an AR-15.
Right.
So we just want to make sure that we put restrictions on that. And from what research has said in a lot of articles I've read, many people agree. The public agrees with this. So there should be something being done. But again, that goes back to what Shirley was saying about legislation and lobbying, and also the self-interest of the politicians of not wanting to, of them thinking that they're having to give up their Second Amendment right, which no one is telling them that they have to give up.
Right. And I think that's what the politicians are all up in arms and saying, like, you can't put restrictions on the Second Amendment because it's like an all or nothing deal. And it's not. I mean, we're asking for that.
That's the point of amendments.
Right.
You amend them.
Go.
Yes.
Is there or is there not a restriction on how much on the legal drinking age? I'm just saying. Is it or is it not? Was it or was it not amended? Was prohibition okay?
I think so. I think so.
It was the only one that's been the only amendment that's been amended.
Right.
You can't amend amendments. It is indeed a possibility.
I mean, what's it gonna? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, what's it gonna hurt to try? You know, like, let's just see if we put these like restrictions and take away your semi-automatic. Let's just see what happens. And if it doesn't work, you know, then fine. We'll go back to the drawing board and see what else we can do. But like, just give it a try. Just give it a good college try and just see what happens.
And that's the thing is that if you all don't know about Emma Gonzales, y'all need to know about her because I will vote for her when she's running for office. But she gave a huge speech a few days after the shooting. She was a student of that school, and we'll link the speech somehow, somewhere. You'll have access to it and listen to the whole thing. It's heart-wrenching, it's beautiful, it's intelligent. But one of the things that she talks about is, like, what she's hearing in these gun lobbyists and these politicians is all my amendments, my rights, like my legal right to own a firearm. But it's like, she was speaking in her own sense, we are the ones dying. We are the kids dying. Like, you favor your personal right to own a gun over the lives of your children in this community. Like, what? Like, where are your priorities? Like, you care about owning a gun more than the lives of the kids in your community? The kids in our country? Like, how? What? Like, you have lived long enough to have your legal right to own a gun. We're not taking that away from you. But these kids can't even live long enough to vote. And you don't fucking care? Sorry, I just hit me. Like, these are babies dying, and you don't give a fuck. You don't give a fuck because you want to own a gun. You want to own a semi-automatic. What the fuck? What the fuck? Babies are dying. Okay. Cool.
I just had real tears.
Sorry, guys. That just hit me, man.
No apologies.
Why would you? No, yeah.
Don't apologize.
It's real. This is a real issue. This is something that's legit happening. Do I have time for a segue?
Yeah, you have time.
Okay. So I don't know if you guys saw the link that I sent you guys on a Facebook link about one of the teachers having to prepare her students in the event that a shooting occurred. That shit was very scary to have it, like, because you hear about it. Like, you hear what teachers
Hold on.
That actually might be good
later.
Right before we start talking about ways you can prepare.
Oh, all right, never mind.
Makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll stop. But Shirley got me thinking. I was like, damn, because that shit about to still like go emotional. But yeah, okay, never mind then. Oh wait.
So let's get into Australia, and
So
then
right,
it'll segue into the keeping
yeah,
ourselves safe.
So yeah, I guess we've all been saying like we're not trying to take away people's personal guns and things like that. That's not what we're saying. I'm going to bring up an example where that did happen, and I am more than okay with that. I don't care. I would just prefer that there weren't guns in the public. I don't give a fuck about an amendment or not. So I'm going to use Australia as an example. Back in 1996, they had the Port Arthur massacre, in which I forget the exact numbers, but it was like 20 something people were killed and 15 or somewhere in the teens amount of people were injured. And so after that, Australia put the National Firearms Agreement into law, and they banned certain semi-automatic self-loading rifles and shotguns and imposed stricter licensing and registration requirements. And it also instituted a mandatory buyback program for firearms. So people would like bring back the firearms and they'd get money for them, and you didn't like get in trouble for giving back the firearms. So then in 2002, they also implemented stricter gun laws, which for like sports shooting handguns, they even restricted like barrel length, caliber, capacity, all that stuff. And they had more people, like they brought back the buyback program so that more people could bring them back at that time and not get in trouble for having kept them after 1996, just to get more guns out of the public's hands. They estimated that they reduced the number of guns in private hands or in private ownership by 20%, which, so that still means that 80% of the guns that were out there at one point are still probably out there. But after that, a study found from 1996 to 2007 that the amount of homicides declined by 20%, and they have not had an actual mass shooting since 1996. So it's an example of what these massive programs can do. Not to say that, if that was something that was done in the United States, that it would just translate right over and work, but it's something to think about. And then I think, Shirley, you mentioned like Canada, they had 2 mass shootings and then they put some restrictions in place. I don't know exactly what those are, but yeah, so it's been done in other places.
I think
I get it. Like our culture is not the same. Like we're very much into shooting and guns and violence, and it's part of movies and it's just video games, and like it's just part of who we are, unfortunately. But I think there's some wisdom and value to be found in what other countries have been able to do.
Yeah, and I think along with, yes, we have a culture of shooting and violence in this country. Our history was founded on such violence. But I think
slavery,
colonization. But I think also on top of that, it's a different culture of actually caring about your community. Do you know what I mean? Like caring about the collective. We're a very individualistic society.
Yes.
In Australia, it's also illegal to be racist. Like you can report to the authorities people having racial bias against you, and they can get arrested. They can have legal charges brought against them because of their history with Aboriginals and all of that in Australia. So it talks about a culture where the collective is more important. And that's something that is sorely missing in this country, which is unfortunate for the country of immigrants. And that's a whole other conversation, where a lot of these immigrant nations are very collectivistic, and it clashes with that individualistic mindset pulse of this country. And it's unfortunate because we're killing our citizens. We're killing our people because we care more about my.
Right. And I also think on top of that is that America also has a ginormous pride and ego that we can't puncture or hurt. So like saying, oh, Australia did this and Canada did this, so we should do it. It's like, oh, we don't want to copy off them. America's their own thing. We can handle our own shit. We don't need any help from other people. So that's why I feel like we haven't adopted these measures, because we have that mindset of like, don't tell us what to do. We're the land of the free. So
especially those countries.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
They're so nice. Pushovers.
Right.
Yeah.
That's true.
But then we go and invade other countries and tell them what's the right thing to do.
Interesting.
Right.
Yep.
We're a country of
We're world
democracy.
leaders. We're world leaders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Big brother.
Ah.
The annoying big brother.
So we've talked about some of the larger national changes, state larger changes that we can do, but we should probably talk about how to keep ourselves safe in case the situation ever comes up where we have to try to survive, basically, not die. So while the odds of it happening at this point are still pretty low, it's still a reality that we have to deal with. This is part of our culture now and something that we go through. So it's always good to be prepared. So the Department of Homeland Security, they came up with some advice on what to do if there is an active shooter, which is defined as someone with a gun engaged in killing or trying to kill people in a confined and populated place. So there's going to be chaos. There's no way you can control what's going to happen. You're not going to know when, where, how, but there are some things that you can do to try to keep yourself safe. So anywhere you go in a public place, look for the exits around you. If you're in a movie theater, look for where the exits are. If you're on public transportation, look at where the exits are. Even if you're at like an outdoor music festival, figure out where your closest exits are. So I guess sorry, I'm jumping all over the place.
Okay.
So the advice, I guess the tagline for it is like run, hide, fight. And that's the order in which you want to try to get out of the situation. So the first one would be run. So that goes with the exits, knowing where you are. If the gunman is not, like if you're not in their direct path, you want to try to get out of a building, use stairwells, never use an elevator. If you are on a higher floor and you're not so high up that like jumping out of a window would hurt you, jump out of a window, try to get out that way. Never, ever, ever, ever pull a fire alarm, because at that point people are confused about whether it's a fire or something else happening. And don't yell like, get out. Yell very specifically like gunman, shooting, something to that nature, so that people know exactly what is going on. Okay. So also, if you are running, run in a zigzag if you are in the gunman's line of sight. So that's a real thing. I always thought that was just like a movie thing, but yeah, make it harder for them to hit you. If you are not able to escape, the next option would be to hide, which is, you want to think of it more as like not hiding and hoping that it goes well, but denying them access. So if you can get to a closed room with a door, or a door that locks, closet, anywhere like that, somewhere dark. Apparently rooms by elevators are good because of the reinforcement for the building. It's less likely to be like plaster wall. It's more likely to be steel or concrete or something.
Yeah.
Hiding under your desk in an office is kind of like a last resort thing for hiding, but just try to be like as quiet as possible. Playing dead is not a good idea because they will come back and sometimes shoot into bodies that they think are already dead. If you do get shot, don't stop. Just keep going until you can get out.
Until you can't.
Mm.
Or you can get out, yeah.
So what should you do after hiding? Don't stop to grab belongings. Turn off the lights. Don't talk to other people. Stay quiet. Don't use social media because it might give away your location. Stay low in your hiding place. They usually shoot at like chest level, head level. What else? Oh, okay. So you can call 911, but then silence the phone, stop speaking, let it keep playing, or like just let it keep going so that the dispatcher can hear what's happening. Let's see. Okay. So last resort would be fight. Throw or use whatever you have at hand against the gunman and don't hold back. Just like throw it with your full force. If you're strong enough, you can try to wrestle or jump on the gunman if he stops to reload, which can sometimes take a few seconds if it happens to be that type of weapon. Let's see. So if someone is hurt or calls for help while you're hiding, don't actually open the door for them. Only open the door if you know like the gunman is not in that area. Otherwise, just stay hidden. Like it sucks, but you got to take care of yourself. Also, if you are around someone that's been hurt or is bleeding, don't help them unless, again, you're, not going to get hurt yourself. The biggest thing to do is just to like stop the bleeding until somebody can get to them. When help does arrive, they may not know who the suspect is, so put your hands up, spread your fingers, walk out, just to show that you're not carrying anything and you won't be mistaken for holding a gun. Don't hug officers, don't talk to them, just keep going. Somebody will tell you what to do once you get somewhere safe. So there's a really good video on this that the city of Houston made back in like 2012.
We can link it.
Yeah, it's on YouTube and it's worth a watch. It's pretty good.
So I want to explain a couple of things for, I know some people might have questions about like, well, why would you do that? Or why wouldn't you do that? In terms of the running in the zigzag, especially, I know a lot of people think that's just like a movie thing or like they yelled at the screen, like, what are you doing? So the psychology behind that is that it confuses the shooter, right? So it's all about like what it'll do to the active shooter and it confuses them. And it makes you a harder target. So they'll most likely, hopefully move on to someone else that's an easier target. Same thing with the hiding, especially in a locked space where they can't get access to a dark space. They're most likely in those situations, they're looking for easy targets, and the more difficult you make it for them, for you to be a target is the objective there. Tia touched upon that. Not helping other people. I know it sounds selfish. I know it sounds horrible. Especially, I know a big thing for a lot of people is if they have disabled coworkers or anything like that, they're like, well, of course I would help. It makes it difficult for first responders. That's what they're there for, is to help the people that cannot get out. So you help the first responders by getting your abled body out of the building. You're one less person that they have to worry about. That also includes when you exit a building and your hands are up. You don't want to engage with the first responders because it's more work for them to do. You're keeping them from the people that they can help. That's the psychology behind that. So you get out of the building, your hands up, and you get to, people will be directing you where you need to go. That's all you need to worry about. There's something else I wanted to say, but I forgot. But that's some of the psychology behind that, because I know some people are like, well, that doesn't make any sense. Like, of course I would want to help. You're making it more work for the people that are there to do their job. So that's why you really want to be focused mostly on yourself. Oh, the fight thing. The fight thing is mostly recommended if you're in a group of people that can get together and overpower. it's not as recommended if it's a one-on-one situation, because then you're putting yourself at risk. Also, the reason why you wouldn't open the door for someone who might be injured is that person might actually be one of the engagers in the overtaking or the active shooting. So you can't really trust who you're actually helping or letting into the door. So that's also the psychology behind that. Super heavy, super deep, super scary. But it's information that I don't think, I worked in a couple of agencies, government related, that make it mandatory training. I don't know how regular that is in other office spaces. So that's why we want to provide that information
I don't think it is.
to everyone.
Yep, I also saw it at a government agency. So that was when I was first introduced to the actual video.
My job had us do the training, had everyone become certified and do the training within this past 2017. Like, that was a goal. It's like their road to zero harm. And so that was one of the tactics, the run, hide, fight, and other just situations that you just never know you're going to be in. So I didn't know the same thing I was going to say. That's something that you guys, like you listeners and viewers, could, if you don't know your schools or your area, place of work, wherever you are, whatever their safety plan is, make a point to seek that out, find out about that. And if not, voice your concern if you don't have one. So that way you can get some assistance around that. Fortunately, and I don't know, should I segue?
Yeah.
A Facebook post.
Before you get into that,
I wasn't gonna go into detail, but just
go ahead then. Go ahead.
Nope. I have no. Go ahead, Shirley, because I don't know what you're going to say, and I don't want to lose.
I was just gonna say, so yes, you want to definitely make sure areas that you're not typically used to, you know where the exits are and all of that. But even in your place of work, you need to know where your exits are. It's really easy to get comfortable and familiar with certain spaces. Those spaces are where it's most important for you to know where your exits are and where you need to be going. The places where you're spending most of your time on a daily basis, that's where you need to know where your exits are. Going along with what Tia was saying, lost my train of thought. Yep.
I was just gonna say too, to add on that is just to be aware of your surroundings. I know sometimes like fire drills and whatnot can be inconvenient when you're working, but you know, you do get to know where you're supposed to go to be safe and where your exits are as well. It sucks that you have to like practice this and to make sure you know where to go when like emergencies happen, but it's better to be prepared when something bad could happen.
So that reminds me, I know one thing that usually annoyed me is that if your place of employment has regular fire drills, just be aware that most likely the reason why it happens multiple times at different times of the day is because there's different security staff. So they have to train the security staff on different shifts to make sure that they're up to par. What I was going to piggyback on what Therese was saying is, if your place of employment or where you go to school, whatever age you are, whoever's watching or listening, if you don't know what the safety protocol is, you need to find out. And if that's not something that's regularly scheduled or happening or a drill, like Therese mentioned, air that grievance, like, because it's your safety and it's your colleagues' safeties, it's your classmates' safety. It's important that whatever organization, whatever facility that you are regularly has an active drill that everyone on staff, especially the administration or whoever, knows what's going on and knows what the protocol is. And if that's not happening, it's absolutely your right to bring that up. And it's not anything where it's an attitude or you're mad about it. It's, listen, I'm concerned about my safety. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm concerned about your safety. So let's all get on board and know what we all need to do to keep each other safe. So don't be afraid to bring that up.
And like Shirley was saying last week, don't be afraid to If you see like something suspicious or you have a bad feeling about something, don't be scared to follow that and investigate that and report that. I think that's
Absolutely.
important. If something seems off, say something. At least, keep track of it. So.
And that's one instance where you can be real selfish about it, real individualistic. Listen, I'm worried about my health, honey. Like, I'm worried about my safety. So y'all need to know what's up, because I'm not going to risk myself because you're incompetent about my safety.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. Heavy stuff.
Treese, do you want to say what you...
I don't even know how to bring it in.
Just bring it in. You know we're not good at transitions.
No, yeah.
Here's
So
another update for my computer. Remind me tomorrow.
So there is one example of like a teacher who discussed with her class basically what to do in the event of a shooting. And it was sad reading it because she's enraged. Like, she doesn't know what she's basically writing about, how she's putting her life on the line and for the sake of these kids. So there's like a closet in her room, and she told them to go in there and that she would stay outside. And they're like, well, what about you? Like, that's something that we don't think about. Like, these teachers also are human beings, and they're also laying down, they're sacrificing their lives for the safety of their own students. And it was just really hard, like sad to hear, but like it was just really sad to hear that she's thinking about how back in the day with Soviet Union attacks, how they would, do the drills of like going to hide
bomb drills, yeah,
and all that. And then now here she is, I don't know how many years later, having to do the same, having to do something very similar. And it's not that it's a attack on the country. It's literally a mass shooter just to
your neighbors
to save her children from that. And then just talking about how traumatized they are, because at one point, like, kids were being, how kids are, like, not really paying attention or whatever. Of course, that one student's like, hey, shut the fuck up, this is about my life, you need to listen. And so she was able to express herself and explain like her the safety of like a safety pattern for them in the event that something happens. But it's just crazy that we have to now do this. Not to say that we shouldn't be keeping ourselves safe, but because you have to do something to protect yourself at any time, any situation. But it's just that people are unwilling to do any type of thing with gun restriction, that now kids are having to be traumatized in such a way, which they shouldn't. They should be able to be students and not have to worry about something like this.
Right.
Yeah.
Speaking of, this is sort of going off topic, but it's just about ways to keep kids safe. I know in some schools, mainly with like younger children, there will be like cameras and buzzers to buzz you into the building. And then to get into different sections of the building, you have to have like a special key code, so only certain people can get in at that point. Otherwise, you have to buzz another buzzer with like a camera on it or something, which is nice for people that have those resources and have that technology available to them. But for a lot of people, that's not a possibility. But it is nice that like in some places, there are those type of measures in place to help keep the little ones that don't, they're not going to be able to understand that, keep them, put another measure in place to keep them safe.
Yeah.
There's a couple of schools I worked at on practicums that had that, where they locked the school and you had to buzz to get in.
Yeah.
And they were not letting you in if you did not look familiar on that camera.
Yep.
If you were not a parent, because they knew everybody.
Yep.
And I know that can get frustrating for parents out there, family members out there, but it's kind of what we've been talking about. Is we're talking about the safety of your children and your loved ones. And for me, I don't have any children, but I am willing to sacrifice any inconvenience to make sure that my children, my future children, are safe. So if I gotta take my scarf off to show my clear face, whatever, like I will deal with whatever inconveniences to make sure that my children are in a place that's safe. And that also, on the flip side of that, that puts the power in the parents too. Hold your schools accountable. Hold your neighborhoods, community resources accountable. Like, if you see someone slipping up and just buzzing anybody out there, say something. You know what I mean? Like, these are the lives of your children. These are the lives of your loved ones. Hold the people that hold their safety in their hands accountable, always, and don't ever feel bad about that.
I think that's a good segue into the protests for these students holding accountable. So, sorry, I was making sure we have enough time. So the kids, they're babies, they're kids in high school. There's something going on in Florida. So with all these mass shootings, there goes my microphone. With all these mass shootings, I feel like it happens, thoughts and prayers come along, and then, business as usual. But with this particular school shooting, these high school kids were holding the government, they're holding people accountable, and we should not turn a blind eye to these kids. Like, there is something happening in Florida that we need to pay attention to. So a lot of these kids, they're standing up, they're protesting, and parents, they're going
mothers,
to calls, and they're making sure their voices are heard. I know that today there goes my Siri. That's not the button I wanted. Today there was a lie-in at the White House to protest gun control. And I know that a lot of let me scroll down real quick. There were dates. Oh, we already talked about Emma Gonzales. That's not the right article. So I know that there has been the Women's March Empower branch dedicated to youth-led advocacy, that there's going to be a group of students, teachers, school administrators, and parents to take part in a national school walkout on March 14th. The goal is for students and staff across the country to walk out of the classroom for 17 minutes at 10 a.m. to protest Congress's inaction to do more than tweet thoughts and prayers in response to this gun violence. The students at Parkland, or that high school in Parkland, is also doing their own event on March 24th, where they're doing a March for Our Lives. So they're doing their part. And these are high school students, which should be embarrassing for people in Congress, that they're adults, they're politicians, we elected them in there, and they're doing absolutely nothing. And these high school students aren't doing, they're standing up to making sure that something happens. And man, if I had to place my bet on who can spread the word, who can make a movement, it would be these high school students, because these kids are the ones that grew up with social media. They're the ones who know how to use Facebook, Snapchat, Twitter,
Instagram, WhatsApp,
whatever social media that's probably not even popular right now. They know how to use it. So they're the ones that are going to be able to spread this word. They're the ones that are going to be able to probably make a movement and to have something happen with gun control. So I support them.
Yeah.
Good for these kids.
And the March 14th date was chosen because it's a month after. It'll be a month after the February 14th shooting. There's also another date of April 20th, which is of this year, which is the 19th year anniversary of the Columbine shooting. So if you know any high school students that can get together and band together in their schools, respectfully and responsibly, plan protests in their areas, please get the word out to them. I'm sure they know already. But just in case, it never hurts to be redundant in this information.
And that's another lesson, I think, for this legislation too, is that because they're high school students, some of these high school students are seniors, and guess what? They're 17 and they're going to be 18 soon. True. And they get to vote. And so guess what? When it comes time for election, even though Florida is a purple state, they can help sway the vote to make it more blue. So that's something that you guys should think about if you're listening to this.
Right. That's exactly right. That's another thing that I think a lot of these people don't take these high school students seriously because they're only in high school. But you're right. They're going to be 18 soon. Some of them are. And they're all are going to grow up eventually. So you should probably take them seriously.
Okay. Lastly, the last bit of information that we want to provide, I'm sure there'll be more information that we'll be sharing across our social media, is there are two organizations on top of the high school students that are rallying and putting together their efforts, and that's Moms Demand Action, as well as Every Town. Every Town has been around for a while, tracking school shootings and information regarding that. If you want to get involved with them, you can text ACT, that's ACT, to 64433 and figure out different ways that you can get involved, or you can Google their websites and check them out. That's Moms Demand Action and Every Town. You can text ACT, ACT, to 64433 to get involved.
Thank you for listening to another episode of W.I.N.E. We hope you received all of the information that you need and ways to keep you safe, as well as political action that you can do on your part and participate in the marches. You can follow us on Podbean, YouTube, Google Play. Am I missing one?
iTunes.
Oh, and iTunes for more episodes. And then you can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And that's at W.I.N.E Podcasts with an S. Thanks for listening. Bye.
If you have any questions, send them our way. If you have any feedback, if you have any concerns.
We need high school students to help us with our social media.
Word. All of the sarcasm there.
Right.
I see that wine. Is that wine? Trying to sneak that shit.
I ran out of water.
Which, time out. I have been trying to hold it in. Your cup of water is so big that
How you run out of water?
I was like, whew, that's a huge cup.
Because it was only, I drank it all.
Did you not pay your